I remember the moment, we had the kids for 13 months because it was in June of 2018. I was praying one day and I just really felt the Lord say, you can make a difference. And I want you to start a ministry based on your circumstances. And I was like, God, you're crazy. Like, why? I have no background in social services. I don't have a degree in any of this. I'm just literally living it for the past year. And I had not even finished the grieving process with my son.
This podcast explores stories of people who invest their lives to serve others. The topics and interviews in this show are intended to inspire all of us to live our best story so others can fully discover the kingdom of faith. Hey guys, welcome back to the Kingdom of Faith. This is episode number 6. And hey, we have a surprise interview today. I called on someone that I think highly of. I actually, if you listen to the episode 5 podcast, talked about her first in that podcast. It's Amanda Root, and she is the founder and director of Hope's Bridge here in the Spring Hill, Columbia, Tennessee area. Hey, Amanda.
Hi.
How you doing?
Good. How about you guys?
Good. We're excited to talk to you. And also, obviously, we have my partner in, I should probably not say partner in crime, my partner in podcast, Glenn Buckley here. So, Glenn, did you have a good week so far?
So far, yeah, pretty good. Just, recovering from all of the sweets and cakes and pies and turkey and ham. And
yeah. Well, for those of you who are not familiar with Hope's Bridge, why don't you, Amanda, tell us just a little bit, like high level, what you guys do and what your mission is.
Yeah. So our mission is to offer as many services as we can to keep kids from entering into traditional foster care. We all know that once they're in there, there's a lot of red tape just to get them out, and we want to be able to expedite the process of them either reunifying or finding their permanent home.
About how long have you been in the business of alternatives for foster care?
We started in 2019. So we formed as a ministry in January, and then we got our 501c3 in June of 2019. And our first placement actually came in June of 2019.
What do you mean by placement?
We were able to place a child with one of our bridge families. I only had a few families at that time that just kind of came on and said, I'll be your guinea pig, for lack of a better term. And it was incredible.
When you describe it to me, how it landed in my brain is you are training families, and particularly Christian families from churches, to almost volunteer to be family members for the kids that are potentially going into foster care. Is that kind of how it works?
Yeah, you're pretty accurate with that. We always say that our families are the equivalent of what's called a kinship placement, and that's either a family member or a friend that's in the child's life that's close to them, so that, DCS always calls them first. So our families, we say, are the equivalent to that. We offer them up before they're placed into the foster care system once a family member or a friend has been completely nixed, they can't place them with a family member or friend. So
that's amazing. We actually just did our recap from episode 5 on Facebook Live a few minutes ago, and Glenn mentioned that one of the things that stood out to him most is the statement that I made, that I've heard you make as well, that if the church was doing the job that Jesus was calling us to do, that we wouldn't need a lot of the government services that we have now. So.
Yeah. The thing I always say is that the government stepped up because the church stepped out, and so now it's time for the church to step back in. Yeah.
How do you get your referrals? Can you go a little bit into that?
So it started out just being a referral ministry. What we called ourselves a referral ministry. So we would have these families that we would vet and background check, and then when the Department of Children's Services would have a child that had to be removed from the home, what happens is a social worker has to sit there and call family members and friends and rule them all out. we built relationships with the department at this point to say, hey, we're here if you need us. Once they ruled out any family member or friend, then they're like, well, we're going to call Hope's Bridge and see if we can place a child with one of their families. And so that's kind of how it started. But this past year, we've really evolved into a bigger picture of having power of attorneys. We had 2 placements over the summer where we had gotten a call, and it's weird because it was the exact same situation almost to a T, with 2 different grandparents who the child could not go back to their birth mom and their birth dad. So the grandparents called us and said, hey, our health is failing and we need to find a home that can permanently take our grandchild, and we don't want them to go into foster care. We don't want to surrender them to the state. Do you have a family? And so we were to do what's called the power of attorney. And that's basically the child has to be in the home for 6 months and then they can go into adoption. So we have evolved and brought in power of attorney placements into our program too.
Do you still get the power of attorney if it's a DCS placement with you guys?
We are not working with DCS for power of attorney placements because we don't do them very often unless it's like a special circumstance. Those calls have been oddly word of mouth. People saying, you need to check out Hope's Bridge because they're trying to keep kids from going into foster care. So that's kind of how we got those calls, just random out of the blue. Yeah, it's awesome.
Does a high percentage of your placements, do they end up getting adopted by the family?
Sadly, yes, because a lot, with the first option where we're working with the Department of Children's Services, if mom and dad cannot reunify for whatever reason, for lack of trying or just unable, then our families are given permanent guardianship. And at that time, those families can then decide, hey, like, do we want to go into adoption or do we want this placement to remain the same? So it's kind of a case-by-case thing, but yeah, we are starting to see cases go more into adoption than reunification. I hate to say this, but we've only seen one really incredible case of reunification. The others that did go back to family we have found out over time that majority of them end up in the foster care system again.
What's the average age?
So far, the average age we've had is between birth and age 7. We do get calls for older kids, but again, the need for families to take older children is great. We don't have a lot of families who are able to, because a lot of the families that come to us, they have younger children in the home. And so it's really hard for them to say, yes, we are hopeful. We have new families coming on board that are willing to take older children.
That's so cool. I have said many times, I think what you guys do is almost as creative as anything I've ever seen to just bring the gospel into a really hard situation. Let's talk a few minutes about why why did God choose you to do this? One of the things the stories we love to get out on this podcast is the backstories of the directors and founders. At any moment, any of us can be called into something just as important, and as exciting and as scary as what you've been called into. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about how you got into helping foster children.
That's a great question. We did not seek this out in any way, shape, or form. I had no idea this was the calling that God was going to have on our life. The reason we went into adoption originally was because we had 2 birth children. We had a daughter who was, at the time when we got our kids, was age 12, and our son, she was age 13, and my son was 11. And our son, he had special needs. He had epilepsy. He had an array of health issues. And so we decided, for a long time, we were in and out of children's hospitals. So we just could not say yes to any more children of our own. We just knew God was closing that door. We always said, when Colton stabilizes, we're going to go into adoption, because that's always an option. We wanted a bigger family. So when Colton got to be more stable, we decided, okay, it's time. So, we were in the process of adoption for about 2 years with our home study. We took a really long time, but I believe in divine delay, so I knew God was saying that we needed to wait. We had also had a furniture business that we had launched, and so we were really busy with that. And in April of 2017, God said, I want you to close the doors to your business and just, wait on me. 2 weeks later, after closing the doors to our business, we had just finished our home study. and we got a phone call from it's so weird. So follow me. My husband had a friend he worked with. His wife was a nurse in the NICU at Rutherford St. Thomas Hospital in Murfreesboro. And she said, I have been taking care of this patient. She tested positive for drugs. Dad tested positive for drugs. And there's a 5-day-old baby boy that cannot go home with his parents because he also tested positive for drugs. And they said, they don't want them to go in the foster care system. Would you be open to this? And because you have a home study, you qualify. And so we were kind of like, well, I mean, sure, let's do it. That was around 6:30 in the morning on a Thursday. And about midday, we had already had the Department of Children's Services out to our house to check our house to make sure it's safe. And we were doing all the paperwork. And then we got a phone call from him again saying, hey, we just found out he has a 12-and-a-half-month-old sister. Can you take her too? And we were like, yeah, we won't separate siblings, so let's do it. So by 4:30 that afternoon, we were heading home with 2 new babies, and all we knew was we were keeping them out of foster care. We didn't know what that meant because we never sought out to be foster parents. And so for us, we were just kind of like navigating this whole thing by ourselves. And all we knew was the caseworker said, here's the babies, here's proof that you have the right to take them. We'll be in touch.
Wow.
And we were like, what do we do next? And what was crazy is about 3 months later, we still had never gotten a phone call from the Department of Children's Services.
You had the kids at the house, but no communication with anyone about what do we do next?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Don't know what's going on with parents. Don't know what's going on with DCS. We just knew we were just taking care of these kids. So we pushed and pushed, and I called the Department of Children's Services and I said, hey guys, we haven't heard from you. And it turned out our case slipped through the cracks and they lost the file for my children.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy? So we had no caseworker on our case. We had no file that they could find. And so they had to get some paperwork together in order again. And I had the proof that we could take these children home, but they lost our file.
Wow.
I'm curious what the first trip to Walmart was like.
With 4 kids, 3 in diapers.
Yeah, just coming home with two extras. Like, I can just imagine going to Walmart, just being overwhelmed, filling the buggy with any and everything.
Yeah. Our biological son, he couldn't walk. He was still in diapers. We had 3 kids in diapers. And I thank God for my daughter, because if we didn't have her, I don't know what we would do. The end of October, beginning of November, our son, do you want me to go to this?
Yeah, sure.
This place? Okay. So our son, Colton, had started to get really sick, and it was out of the blue for him. And at that time, we called his pediatrician, and she said, because we were seeing an uptake of seizures and lots of things were going on, and we don't know what was causing it. She said, Amanda, do you want us to call in hospice? Because we knew one day this could happen. And she's like, in your mommy's heart of hearts, what do you feel like God is telling you? And I said, I feel like God is saying yes. I think it's time. And so she called in hospice, and for the next 3 weeks, Colton just got worse and worse, and he ended up having a seizure that lasted about a week and a half, and then it took him about another week and a half for his body just to kind of follow suit, and then he passed away the week after Thanksgiving. So that was tough with the littles and yeah, and all of that, and just moving and all the life changes.
What do you like, just looking back, did you ever just ask God why? Like you've chosen to, give a portion of your life away to these new children, and, you felt like you were doing the right thing, and there must have been moments of doubt, right?
I remember a really, really tough moment after Colton had passed, and this story is a very tender story I don't tell very often. So our daughter, that was a 12-and-a-half-month-old, she had went through so much trauma in her first 12-and-a-half months of life, because she lived in a drug motel. I mean, there's no other way to say it, but she just did, and she endured so much trauma that when she came to us, like, it was a nightmare. I mean, it was hard. When she wasn't sleeping, she was screaming. When she wasn't screaming, she was sleeping. I mean, she wouldn't eat in the same room with us because she was so used to being isolated. And I remember this one morning, I was determined. I was also a grieving mother, so I remember I was just so determined. I was like, this is the day that Ellie is going to sit at the dining room table and she's going to eat with us. And I sat there for over an hour. She's screaming and I'm trying to put the cereal bar in her mouth, to get her to just to say, hey, here's food. Cause she also had food insecurities. So we were used to having to, she would take food and just eat it really fast. And so I thought this would be good. But she just was screaming. I had, cereal bar drooling all over me and I'm just like losing my mind. And my husband's like, Amanda, just give up. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to give up. And finally, about an hour later, I decided it was time to give up. And I took her into this like nook we had in our kitchen where her high chair was. I went to go set her in it and her feet had not even touched the seat, and she started laughing because she knew she had won. And I was just emotional, and I threw that cereal bar as hard as I could at the wall, and that thing bounced down, fell in her lap, and she picked it up and she ate it. I remember in that moment saying to God, why did you take the child I wanted and give me a child that I didn't? And that is a very raw emotion because that's hard to admit. Looking back now, I see why God had me go through that hard stuff. And really the reason why I had to go through it was because I have to be relatable to the families that come into our program. I have to give them a safe place for them to say, I don't want to parent this child anymore because this is too hard. And then I can help them work through it. And I knew that that's eventually, not right away, but I have seen since then, that's where God was taking me with that.
So you just said something that made me think, how do you train families to deal with, the child that's been traumatized or the child that has developmental issues, whatever the case may be?
So there's a state program called 10 Key, and it is a 7-week program that's super intensive and how to help children who've been through trauma. And so our families now, at first because we didn't go through any training ourselves, which I wish we would have. I wish my husband and I would have stepped back and go, like, what training would have been available? But we were never offered training by the Department of Children's Services or anybody else. So I knew how imperative it was. So we put our families through 10 Key training, and then we have also other training throughout the year, like a program called Darkness to Light we're getting ready to start that we're so excited about. And then we give a copy of the book, The Connected Child by Karen Purvis, to our families. So most of the time it's just life experience and walking through it with them, but that's the training they get to go into this with.
Do you offer counseling for your families? Like, do they have a place they can go? You said you want to be able to come to you, but do you involve pastors and churches and...
Yeah, so our 10 Key trainer is actually a pastor's wife at one of the local churches here, and she is an amazing post-placement counselor. If a family needs any form of counseling, there's always her. We also have a counselor on staff that we're in the works of putting together some really cool counseling ideas for our families with him and his practice. What my goal is, one day I would like by the end of 2022 to be able to offer an in-house counselor for play therapy and families.
Yeah,
that's a good goal.
It's amazing to me that you went from that kind of emotional trauma of your own, right, to starting an organization to where you are today. So where was the point where things kind of turned, and did you have a chance to grieve? At what point did you feel like you're launching an organization, following this traumatic experience?
Yeah, it's all it feels like such a blur. I remember the moment, we had the kids for 13 months because it was in June of 2018. I was praying one day and I just really felt the Lord say, you can make a difference, and I want you to start a ministry based on your circumstances. And I was like, God, you're crazy. Like, why? I have no background in social services. I don't have a degree in any of this. I'm just literally living it for the past year. And I had not even finished the grieving process with my son. But I knew, like, if there's one pattern in my life that God has been so faithful in, it is that when he asks me to do something, I just say yes. I know that can look very crazy to people sometimes, but I'd rather follow the voice of the Lord and be wrong than not follow his word and be wrong. So he had asked me to do that in June, and I dragged my feet. I had found my first board member probably in August. And so I just called this girl up one day. I had heard from the Lord that morning in a meeting with another nonprofit that this particular caseworker said, you need to go talk to this place in Murfreesboro. And I was like, okay. And in that meeting, the Lord kept telling me, I want you to call this person. I want you to call this person. And I was like, I'm not going to call her. I've never spoke to her before. She doesn't probably even know who I am. And I just kept hearing that all day long. And so that afternoon I went home and I called her and we talked for about 5 minutes. And I said, you're going to think I'm nuts, but the Lord has spoken to me about calling you and asking you to join my board, and just think about it and let me know. And so she came back the next day and she's like, yeah, I'll join your board. She's like, how do you know I'm not gonna steal from you? I said, because your hands are never gonna touch the money. Like, you're just gonna be on the board. After she said yes, nothing really happened for the rest of the year because I was just dragging my feet. And I think it was also fear of being exposed. And so I knew if I was gonna take the step and this precious thing that God asked me to do, if I was gonna do this, that means I had to share it with the world. That means that I had to open myself up to criticism. That means I had to open myself up to hurt and pain, possibly. And I wasn't ready to do that. In February, but I remember I had to go to the hospital because I was passing a kidney stone. So I'm laying in the hospital bed. Honestly, where do I go with these stories? But anyway, I was laying in the hospital bed and I started getting these messages from this particular girl who said yes to my board. And apparently she was texting me all these things over and over about just different people saying all these things. And I'm like, wait, what is happening? She had gotten on a foster parent page and she was like, I'm going to share Hope's Bridge with this foster parent page. Guys, the foster world is very different. That's why I stay at arm's length with it, because I don't want to lump us in there because this is such a different realm of what we do. But that day made me realize, oh my goodness, God, you're going to have to protect me so that we stand out and that people see that this is definitely you, because this foster world is not accepting what we're doing. And so we got a lot of like, this is a glorified babysitting service, or wait, you're asking people to be foster parents without pay. And people just weren't getting it right away. It took us a while to really develop that. It was that moment that I finally realized, well, she hit the go button, so let's do this. So yeah, then it just progressed from there.
And it's going really fast. What does the last year look like for you?
The last year's been really amazing. I would say really the trajectory changed when we came to meet you. And gosh, I was so broken and hurt. We had a really rough turning point in June of 2020. It was just a really, really rough time, but God worked it out, and he was so faithful from beginning to end. And I had to literally, like, my board was wiped clean and I had to start over from scratch. So when I came to meet you and the Groove Life team in February, it was on my birthday, oddly enough. So I was like, well, this is a great present to me. But when I met you guys, I was broken. I was hurt. And I mean, so many times I was on the verge of quitting. I was like, God, I can't do this. We had been averaging about 4 families the whole time that we were in that transition. Our families, what we call our bridge families, they really had stuck by my side. And I was very blessed because, you know, I still had a foundation, even if it didn't feel like I did. So when I came to meet you in February, I felt like the trajectory changed in so many ways, because I guess I was born a leader, but I didn't know it. I didn't know how to utilize it. I didn't know how to use it in a positive way. My life really changed when I was able to be poured into with leadership development and just getting the right board, people who see the vision of Hope's Bridge and really just like latch onto that. Because the problem with that happened with a lot of the old board was they were so rooted in the foster care system that they wanted to see that duplicated. They wanted to take it in that direction. And I fought tooth and nail and was like, no, this is not what God wants for this. He wants something different. If we are not to conform to the world, we are supposed to be different and stand out as Christians. And that's what I wanted. So it seemed like February on, we were able to develop a really amazing team. I was able to develop more as a leader, and just getting the backing and the help with people who believe in that mission, it just changed the course of Hope's Bridge. So this whole year, it's been we've been working on licensure, which what that means is we'll be licensed by the state to be a child placement agency. Once that goes through, we'll receive our license and we will get to start placing with the state again.
Yeah, that's awesome. I kind of have this bullet point list that I throw out there frequently with nonprofits that I've been working in the nonprofit realm for a long time, but particularly with this little group of nonprofits that we've pulled together about a year or so. The 4 things that I see that nonprofit leaders need more than anything is some amount of money. There's never enough money to do everything you want to do in nonprofit world, right? And some sort of facilities, even if it's just a place like even when I'm at, I guess we have 6 or 7, 8 nonprofits that rally together once a month and have community together. And most of you guys, when I first met you, you didn't have any facilities. Like you were doing paperwork in your living room, right? And having counseling sessions in your dining room. So money, facilities, there's always a need for some form of facilities. And then on the less tangible side, leadership development, because I think God finds joy in choosing the unequipped to glorify himself. Yeah. And so there's always a need for leadership development. Not that you're a wonderful leader. I've said that to you many times. So you know where I'm coming from. And then the 4th thing is just community, because I remember I led a nonprofit ministry for several years in Auburn, Alabama, and I just didn't feel like I had anyone to talk to. Like I felt like I was the only one that got the vision sometimes. I did have a good community I had a really, really solid directional board, and they got the vision, but beyond that, it was hard to cast the vision. And sometimes you didn't want to go with your weaknesses to your leadership team because it's very vulnerable to share your weaknesses and your struggles and your discouragement. You want to keep them encouraged. So money, facilities, leadership development, and community. And if you take those 4 bullet points, that's what I've seen you really thrive in the last year. You guys have been able to raise some good support where you can pay your bills every month and not have to worry too much about it. And you have a new office. You have a Hope's Bridge office which is where you're at right now, which is awesome. Yeah. And then you've just been super coachable and open to leadership development. And we've done mission, vision, value weekend with your board, and we've done a strategic planning weekend. So you've been very open to that. But I think though, more than anything, just watching all of you guys develop, it's we have this thing called the Missional Monday Luncheon. And so the first Monday of every month, all of us get together for a couple of hours. And just seeing you guys, we always share what's the best thing that's happened since the last time you met and the biggest challenge. And seeing you guys love on each other and encourage each other and commiserate together and just be such a huge support to each other has been a huge blessing for me to watch. Like I could leave that Missional Monday now and never return and know that you guys have developed a relationship that's going to continue. But all the way to the point where whenever any of you have fundraising banquets, you're all at each other's banquets. And, we have a text thread that goes around that says, hey, we're having a fundraiser and I need some swag, to put in a basket or whatever. So just to see you guys partner, that's the body of Christ. That's what the body of Christ is. Yeah. I always say nonprofits are the most missional people on the planet because you're actually taking the gospel into very broken situations.
Right. I was gonna say what's really cool about the group, and I don't know if this was intentional on your behalf in any way, but almost every nonprofit, we're about the same age. And so it's been really amazing, like walking with every one of them in the same birth level, if that makes sense. And we just go back and forth and realize that the things that we're going through are completely normal in ministry and the nonprofit world and fundraising. I feel like we're all at about the same level too. So yeah, that's been the best part.
It's been a blessing for me to watch for sure.
What are some ways that people can get involved with your organization? I've got the website on here, hopesbridgetn.com. So obviously people go there and check that out. But do you have a need for volunteers other than host families? Are there other ways to volunteer? Obviously there's, donating, not just money, but do you have a need for clothing and beds and bed sheets and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we actually have a wraparound closet for our kids here in our facilities because we want to be able to provide the needs, especially for the first 48 hours, because these kids will come into homes and they'll have nothing except for the clothes on their back. And so we want to make sure that the night that they have all of their needs met so that they feel comfortable. So we do have a wraparound closet that we carry up to size 6. And then anything above 6, we do ask for gift cards for those older kids so we can run to Walmart or Target and get the needs for them met that night. So always have a need for gift cards, clothing that is gently used or new up to size 6, diapers, like full packages of diapers and wipes, and then car seats. We're only accepting new car seats at this time instead of older ones. So physical needs, there's that. Volunteer needs, we always need people who are gifted in every area of a business. We need anywhere from letter writers, because every time we have an event, there's an abundance of thank you letters that go out, and we need people who are good at tech, media, public relations. We always have a need for people who are gifted in those arenas because we're mission driven here. So we're just gung-ho on our mission, and we don't always think about those things, but we need them. Volunteers, event planning. We have a small event planning committee that's actually gathering here tomorrow to go over events for the next year. If you want to be on the event planning committee, please call us because events are always a big deal to put on, and volunteers just seem to be pretty scarce in that. So if you want to be a babysitter or a respite family, we need those. I mean, we do background checks on people for those, but our families are always saying, who do you know that can watch these kids while I go to a doctor's appointment?
Also, just sharing because our listener base is pretty broad all over the Southeast mostly, but even beyond. So your long-term vision for Hope's Bridge is to not just be here in Williamson, Murray County, right? Right.
Yeah. I mean, we want to make this a duplicatable system because, this is so unique. We believe that this is meant to be in every state. We're started here in Middle Tennessee. East Tennessee already has asked us several times, random people there that have said, hey, we need you here. So we're going to eventually broaden it through the state, and then we want to start working in the surrounding states. So if you also are interested, that is to come in the future.
Awesome.
If you would like to actually have a branch of Hope's Bridge in your area, that's another reason you might want to contact Amanda, even if it's way down the road, just to kind of get on the radar for that. So
Amanda, I think I speak for Kevin and I both. Anything you need from either of us, give us a call. Kevin's not so great on the tech side, but
easy. What are you talking about? Huh? I'm a little slow. I used to be really great, man. Like my cell phone, I was the best in the family until I hit about 40. In the last 8 years, I have to ask my kids to do anything. So as we're closing out, also might say that if you are listening and you feel inspired to start a ministry, start a nonprofit, man, Buckley and I would love to talk to you about that as well. We may only be able to offer you encouragement, but that's one of the most important things anybody can offer you. So that's part of our goal for this podcast, is to inspire you guys as well. And so if you have a nonprofit and you just need someone to listen to your problems for an hour, or you need, maybe even some advice, we both have led multiple nonprofits in our past. So we'd love to hear from you as well at the Kingdom Effect.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being with us today, especially on such short notice. You guys are amazing. The work you're doing is amazing. And like I said before, Kevin and I are two of your biggest supporters, and I know our listeners will be too. So, again, thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the Kingdom Effect podcast. Help us out by sharing us with your friends and leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform. To stay up to date, find our Facebook group called the Kingdom Effect Podcast. We'll see you next time on the Kingdom Effect.